Red Wings before Mike Ilitch bought the team, and that's how far I go back. I'm sure your dad, who's probably listening out there, can probably be more related as a hockey fan.
He's not really a hockey
He's
fan.
not? Okay,
No.
well, whatever. During his time, obviously, hockey was a little bit more
Absolutely,
emphasized,
yeah.
but I go back to Bruce Norris when he actually owned it. So, but that said, we'll go to a sport you do know, and we're going to welcome Mel Farr back to the show. Mel, thank you very much for being on the program. Glad to have you back twice in 1 week, and we're going to make sure you get a lot of a workload for sure.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Just so you know, I put you on my Twitter list to share a copy with, so start looking for some of these football updates so I can load up your mind with some other material. So look for it if you get on Twitter. All right?
Okay, we'll do.
Meanwhile, we won't worry about what's on Twitter, but we will talk about Shad Khan saying to the AP that Jalen Ramsey, we're not trading you. Money is no object. So, how do you like the position of an owner that's like this since he's taken his stance above his front office people?
I mean, I think that's smart on his part. I mean, he's the one that's got the biggest investment.
Right.
He's got the most to lose in this deal. You can't build a winning franchise by allowing your draft picks to get out of there, especially if they're quality and high draft picks. And Jalen Ramsey's a high draft pick. The guy is 6'1", runs a 4.3, 4.4 40, whatever.
Right.
And they say he's a shutdown corner. Now, shutdown corners don't grow on trees. So he's smart in getting involved in saying that he doesn't want to trade Jalen Ramsey. I think Jalen's problem all along has been about the money. Tom Coughlin has said he wasn't going to extend him this year. He wasn't going to have contract extension talks with him. And it made it seem as if he was just going to allow him to play out his 5 years, his 4-year deal plus his one option year, and let him walk away, which to me is just ridiculous. If you have a personality conflict, you got to work that out. This is business. This is not pleasure. This is business, and they're trying to win a championship. And the only way you win championships is you got to have horses. Tom Coughlin, he doesn't hit anybody, doesn't tackle anybody, doesn't run the football, he doesn't throw the football. His job is to give the coach the best possible talent that he can, and let the coach him up. And if there's a disagreement, then ownership needs to step in and veto whatever management is saying and say, hey, no, this guy's going to be here, whether you like it or not. You guys have to work it out.
Good point. So let me ask you a question. You talk about Tom Coughlin, Mel. Do you think that he's lost a little bit of a connection with today's players, or does he have to adapt more to what's going on now?
Well, I mean, they drafted these guys. If you're talking about Leonard Fournette and
Right.
Jalen Ramsey, he was there, I believe, and he drafted both of those guys.
Well,
he knew
actually,
what type of individuals they were.
did
He's got to adjust.
Yeah. Did he draft Jalen Ramsey, or was that under the previous regime when I think Gus Bradley was the coach? I'm trying to remember that.
This is his fourth. This is Jalen's. He's starting his 4th year.
Right.
So I'm not certain if he drafted him or not. I think Tom Coughlin has been down there about that long now.
He has, I believe so.
Yeah, probably. Or maybe David Caldwell drafted him, because I know he's been there longer than Tom came aboard just recently, a couple of years. But nonetheless, you're right. And I'm just curious, okay? Because I do know that Gus Bradley was his coach before Doug Marrone got there. And, if you've ever met Gus Bradley, he's certainly one of the nicest guys on the planet. And I enjoy working with Doug Marrone, too. Doug has always been very cooperative, Mel and Lewis, to me, and Gus was just a great guy. So, nevertheless, you're right. Shutdown corners, Mel, do not grow on trees. And I think that there's no question that, Shad Khan definitely was on a target when he's taking over the situation, because what's really happening is the Jacksonville Jaguars are still having a decent year without the fact that they lost their number one quarterback and have found another guy in the meantime that's holding down the fort, or may hold it longer than we think.
He may very well. I mean, Nick Foles may never see the field again, which would be a good situation for Jacksonville, because then you have a quarterback there, one of those rookie contracts, and especially this guy here, he wasn't drafted in the first round, so you got a little time that you can play with some money. And so if you need to pay a guy like Jalen, now you can go ahead and pay him, because you're not going to have to worry about Nick Foles because you can get rid of that contract if necessary, so you can sign a guy like Jalen.
That's a good point, Mel. It really, really is. I mean, anytime you get a guy in the sixth round with 176 pick in the draft, you're not paying him a whole lot of money. I don't think there's a whole lot of guaranteed money. But then again, when I've gotten to know Gardner Minshew up there, and Gardner Minshew's just glad to be in the league, knowing that he was carrying a clipboard at Alabama. Mike Leach got him up to Washington State, and then Tom Coughlin, with his ability to judge talent, along with David Caldwell and the rest of the Jaguars personnel, snapped this guy. I guess they call Washington what, Mel, the Apple State, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Right. So he snapped this apple out of that state, and now he's got him in a small market like Jacksonville. So, and it didn't take long for him to win that fan base over. So now that we're talking about Minshew for a moment, and I'm glad we talked about Jalen Ramsey because you made some good points there. What are your thoughts about that promotion that they have with the Minshew Mania, with the bandana, the picture on there? I think that's a brilliant marketing move by Jacksonville.
Yeah, well, the club right now is what? They won, what, 1 or 2 games maybe?
They won two,
so,
yeah.
Another
so they're what, they're 2-2, so
right,
yeah,
correct.
You can jump on that bandwagon, create some excitement for the fan base, get the people excited about coming out there and watching the Jacksonville Jaguar game, and get them excited about the fan base and the possibility that this guy could be their new franchise quarterback.
Right, and
that's an excellent.
Right, and let's not lose sight of the fact that this is the Jaguars' 25th anniversary, and before the season started, their PR department was so brilliant that they were sending us the top 25 players in their 25-year history, and then all of a sudden you got some guy that came out of nowhere on that anniversary team, because you know there's a lot of festivities that are going to occur as the year progresses, particularly at home. So why not have a pretty good season in the midst of a year along these lines, Mel?
Absolutely, and jump on the Minshew bandwagon. I mean, get behind this guy, rally behind this guy. He's going to be the quarterback for a while, so they might as well do it, take advantage of it.
That's what they're doing. Okay, let's talk about a couple of NFL games that we can zone in on. The Green Bay Packers at the Dallas Cowboys, both are coming off losses. What are your takes on that?
Well, obviously, two good football teams. Both of them, as you said, coming off losses. Both of them want to get back in the winning column. I like the Cowboys in this game. I think they are better from top to bottom, offensively and defensively. I'm still a little suspect about Green Bay's defense, even though they came out and played an outstanding game the first week of the season. The defense did. And then, this offensive system with Aaron Rodgers, you look at his face, he doesn't seem to be too happy.
Right.
Because I don't think he has the same type of freedom and flexibility that he's had in the years past. So I think this will be a good game it'll be a good game to watch, obviously, but I think the Cowboys will come out on top.
Well, my take on that is the Green Bay Packers wide receiving core isn't what it used to be either. I mean, you had Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson, to name a few. Devontae Adams, I believe, is going to miss this game. So, who's Rodgers going to throw it to? I mean, I think he'll have a pretty decent game, but, you don't have any targets out there that scare the daylights out of you as you have in the past. You know what I mean? So,
I think the thing with Aaron Rodgers is it never really mattered who he was throwing to.
Right.
Because I believe, he makes everybody around him, particularly the wide receivers, he makes them better because he's so accurate with the football and he'll get the ball to him on time. So I think it's less about who's out there and more about, obviously, Aaron Rodgers. But, as Aaron goes, that team's going to go, that offense is going to go. I still believe they need to, establish the running game. I think that's the same thing that Dallas needs to do. I think they got away from that a little bit, and that's kind of the reason why they played the Saints the way they played them. I believe they need to get back to giving the ball to Zeke and then playing off of that, throwing off of that. That's when I believe they're most successful, and they have the best chance to win. I mean, that team goes as Ezekiel Elliott goes. You have all that money invested in that offensive line. You need to make those guys earn it, and you just paid Zeke all that money. You need to make him earn it.
Good points. All right, so we got a game going on right now out in the Pacific Northwest, the Seattle Seahawks against the Rams. Very interesting games last week, and now they're matching up right now. Lewis Weiss will get us a score in about a moment, but what are your thoughts about the matchup that we have?
Yeah, again, the Rams, they need to get back to doing what they do best. They can't allow Jared Goff to throw for 500 yards. That's not what they need. And have him drop back 50 times or
68 times to be exact.
Drop back was 58.
68
I don't know how many times
times.
they dropped back last week, but that's not a winning formula for them.
68.
They need to get Todd Gurley going, get that running game established, and then do the play action pass off of that. The Seahawks, on the other hand, same thing. They've been doing that, running the football and letting Russell Wilson make plays. But I believe at the end of the day, the Seahawks will come out on top because I think they just have a little bit. I trust Russell Wilson a little bit more than I trust Jared Goff.
Well, good. You know what? We're going to give you an update on that. By the way, Lewis as our crack statistician as well. He says that Goff how many?
He was 45 for 68 last week, 501 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, but he was picked off 3 times, one of which Sue took, to the end zone for a touchdown.
Can't throw the ball that many times, so let's get a score here, Lewis.
14 to 6.
Can't have dropping back 68 times.
I know that's a lot.
We saw Breeze throw 64 times a couple of years ago, and I believe he won that game. But Goff isn't of the caliber of Drew Brees.
So we're going to find out what good of a prognosticator Mel Farr is, because that score is indeed what Mr. Farr says, and that the Seattle Seahawks own a 14-6 lead against the Rams. So there you have it. I think you're right. It's not a game that appears right now to have a lot of offense. How much time is left in that, Lewis?
About 2 minutes, but Wilson's 10 for 13, and he's already thrown 2 touchdown passes. I think he's getting better and better each year, even as he's getting older. We may see, and I know this is only, his 7th year in the league. He's going to age pretty gracefully. I know speed doesn't always age well, but he's a mobile quarterback who's made it work because of his ability to also be an elite passer. And he hasn't always done it with elite, receivers. You remember that? You probably remember, Mel, when he had Doug Baldwin for a couple of years stretch where he was a dominant receiver. He was a good receiver when they won that first Super Bowl, but he kind of exploded for a couple of years, and then injuries forced him into early retirement. But Wilson kind of just finds ways to get it done, even though he doesn't have, the biggest names around him on that receiving corps.
Yeah, the guy's a winner. I mean, I remember watching him when he was at Wisconsin, and when the draft came up, you could kind of see Pete Carroll knew what he had when he drafted him. I think the only thing that kept Russell Wilson from getting drafted in the first round was his height, because he was a first-round talent. I saw the guy at Wisconsin, and the talent was unbelievable. I mean, the type of individual he is, he just has that intangible. The guy's a winner, and it's infectious. And when he went to Seattle and won the job, it wasn't any surprise to me. And he's just continued to get better and better and better every single year. And that's what you like to see in these young quarterbacks, is the willingness, number one, to get better, and then going out there and showing it that you're getting better, that you're putting in the work in the offseason. Unlike some other quarterbacks, young quarterbacks out there, one of the guys that frustrates me to no end is Cam Newton.
Oh, yeah.
He has a lot more physical ability than Russell Wilson, but just has not put it all together. Just has not gotten better.
And
since the year he won the MVP, it's not gotten better.
And Mel, would you argue, considering that he has Lisfranc injury in his foot right now, which he's going to be out for a while. Kyle Allen's been serviceable. He's actually completed an average of 71% of his passes in the 2 games that he started, although he's fumbled 5 times. Would you argue that despite the contract that Newton has, given his prolonged struggles and given that he hasn't even been that much of a mobile force, he's actually, through 2 games started, accounted for -1 rushing yards in 2 games. Would you argue that he's played his last game in Carolina, or do you think that there's still a chance that he starts once he returns from injury?
I think once he returns from injury, he'll start. If the team still sputters and struggles, and if Ron Rivera loses his job, it could possibly be his last game in Carolina. But at the end of the year, if Ron Rivera loses his job, I don't see Cam Newton going back to Carolina. But I think once he's healthy, I think they'll give him an opportunity to go back in there and start. But if they sputter and the offense is not moving, they'll have no problems putting that guy back in there, because the offense has been moving. The offense has looked good since Kyle Allen has been in there. They've been moving the ball. He's been hitting open receivers. It's looked good. And if I was Cam Newton, I would be chomping at the bit to get back. And I know he said he had an interview, he's smoking a cigar and drinking some wine or whatever he was drinking, talking about he's going to take his time getting back. He can do that if he wants to, but he might not have a job when he gets back. That takes too long.
Well, it's funny you say that, Mel. Let's not forget that Jerry Richardson no longer owns his team, that they're under new ownership. So
That's
so,
correct.
we all have to understand out here